Dr. Madison Taylor hadn't slept in 36 hours, but the quantum readings on her holographic display jolted her more awake than any coffee could manage. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the Lunar Observatory's deep space sensors, focusing them on a point just beyond Jupiter's orbit. The anomaly was still there, growing larger with each passing second. "Computer, run diagnostic sequence Delta 7, she commanded, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The massive quantum detection array hummed in response, its crystalline processors analyzing the impossible data streaming in from the outer solar system. Diagnostic complete. All systems functioning within normal parameters. The coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the observatory's polished floor. The liquid spread in a perfect circle, reflecting the holographic displays that filled the room with an eerie blue glow. The readings weren't wrong. They couldn't be wrong. "Dr. Reynolds," she called out, her voice echoing through the facility's curved corridors. "You need to see this. Now." The head of the Lunar Observatory appeared minutes later, his weathered face lighting up with interest as he studied the quantum signature charts. "Mass displacement on that scale. It's not natural," he muttered, enlarging one particular section of the data stream. Madison nodded, pulling up additional sensor feeds. "They're decelerating," she said, highlighting a series of energy spikes. "Using some kind of gravitational manipulation we've never seen before. The physics involved." She trailed off, running calculations through her neural interface. "How many?" Reynolds asked, his face growing pale as he began to understand the implications. "At least 300 distinct objects, each larger than our biggest orbital platforms. They're arranged in a formation that's too precise to be natural." Madison projected a three-dimensional model of the approaching anomalies. "This isn't a random collection of space debris or some kind of cosmic phenomenon. This is a fleet." Reynolds was already activating the secure quantum communication channel to Earth's Combined Space Command. "General Santos, this is Dr. Reynolds at Lunar Observatory 1. We have a Code Omega situation. I repeat, Code Omega. Forwarding data now." Within minutes, encrypted channels across Earth and its colonies blazed with activity. The Quantum Entanglement Network, humanity's fastest form of communication, carried the news to every major military and scientific installation in the solar system. Madison watched as her discovery triggered a cascade of responses. Defense satellites silently repositioned themselves, their stealth systems engaging as they prepared for the unknown. The massive solar shields protecting Earth's climate began power-sharing protocols, ready to convert their energy collection systems into defensive screens if needed. "Look at these energy readings," she said, highlighting a particular pattern in the data. "They're using some form of quantum field manipulation we've only theorized about. The power requirements alone should be impossible, but they're doing it with seemingly minimal effort." Reynolds studied the data, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his concern. "The way they're bleeding off velocity. It's like they're ignoring half the laws of physics we know. Or they understand them better than we do." Madison added, her mind already racing with possibilities. She initiated a deeper scan, using the observatory's full array of quantum sensors. The results painted an even more extraordinary picture. Their hull configurations, she noted, they're not just ships. They're carrying some kind of lattice structure. It's like their entire fleet is one massive quantum computer. As they studied the data, the first images from the long-range optical arrays began arriving. The ships were beautiful in their alienness, crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, their surfaces shifting and flowing like liquid metal. A priority message flashed across their screens. "Global Defense Council Emergency Session Convening. All senior scientific advisors report to designated secure locations." Madison felt a mix of fear and exhilaration as she gathered her data cores. Humanity had wondered for centuries if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was approaching at relativistic speeds. "Dr. Taylor," Reynolds said, his voice grave but determined, I believe you've just become the most important scientist in human history. The Council will need everything we know about our visitors." As she prepared for emergency teleport to the Council's bunker, Madison took one last look at the quantum readings. Something in the pattern of the fleet's deceleration nagged at her consciousness, a hint of order that suggested purpose. Whether that purpose meant peace or war would determine the fate of her species. The warning had been delivered. Now humanity had to decide how to answer it. Admiral James Okonjo stood before the holographic display in the Global Defense Council's underground chamber, his weathered face illuminated by the swirling representation of Earth's combined defensive assets. Representatives from 23 nations watched in tense silence as he outlined humanity's response to the approaching fleet. "We have 48 hours before they cross the Mars orbital line," he stated, his deep voice carrying the weight of experience. "In that time, we need to transform 3 centuries of competing military doctrines into a unified defense strategy." The Russian Space Force commander, General Petrova, leaned forward. "Our orbital defense grid can be fully operational in 12 hours, but without knowing their capabilities. The grid won't be enough." Dr. Madison Taylor interrupted, stepping into the projection field. Her recent teleport from the Lunar Observatory had left her disheveled, but her eyes burned with intensity. "Their quantum field manipulation suggests our conventional defenses might as well be paper shields." Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Admiral Okonjo raised his hand for silence. "Then we changed the game." "Dr. Taylor, explain what you discovered about their deceleration pattern." Madison manipulated the hologram, highlighting the alien fleet's trajectory. "They're bleeding off velocity in perfect, measured bursts. Too perfect. Every course correction, every maneuver follows precise mathematical patterns. They're showing us not just advanced technology, but a mindset, one that values order above all else." "And how does this help us?" the Chinese admiral asked, his fingers drumming against his neural interface pad. A slight smile crossed Okonjo's face. "Because order has its own weaknesses. During the African resource wars, I learned that perfectly structured systems are often the most vulnerable to chaos." He expanded the tactical display. "We don't match their precision. We overwhelm it with complexity." The next hour became a blur of rapid-fire decisions. The European Space Agency's quantum satellites began repositioning for maximum coverage. Japanese defense platforms initiated their metamorphic protocols, their structures flowing into new configurations that defied standard tactical analysis. "Civilian infrastructure is our hidden advantage," Okonjo continued. "Every communications satellite, every orbital manufacturing platform becomes part of our defense network. We create a battlefield so complex that perfect order becomes a liability." Dr. Taylor's quantum analysis programs projected possible engagement scenarios across the holographic sphere. Their technology operates on principles we're only beginning to understand, but their tactical approach shows rigid patterns. They expect the same from us. The Indian Space Command representative spoke up. "Our lunar mining operations have already begun converting excavation platforms into defensive positions, but the civilian casualties if we fail. Which is why we're not just preparing for war," Okonjo replied. "Dr. Taylor's team will continue analyzing their communications for any possibility of peaceful contact. But if they come with hostile intent, they'll face a humanity they didn't expect." The next several hours transformed the solar system. Orbital factories retooled their production lines for military hardware. Civilian space traffic reorganized into strategic patterns disguised as chaos. Deep space monitoring stations became forward observation posts. In her makeshift lab adjacent to the council chamber, Madison worked through neural interface projections of the alien fleet's quantum signatures. Each analysis revealed layers of complexity in their technology, but also hints of predictability in their behavior. "Admiral," she called out during a brief recess, "look at this pattern in their formation changes. It's like they're following a script. Advanced, yes, but with underlying rules they won't break." Okonjo studied the data, recognition flickering in his eyes. like a master martial artist who's never faced a street fighter. Perfect form, but potentially vulnerable to the unexpected. He activated the Council's main communication array. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've found our strategy." As the Council reconvened, the Admiral's plan took shape. Earth's defenses would not attempt to match the aliens' technological superiority. Instead, they would present an ever-shifting puzzle, a defense that combined military assets with civilian infrastructure in ways that no logical analysis could fully predict. "We are humanity," Okonjo concluded, his words reaching every military and civilian leader across the planet. "Our greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt, to find solutions where none should exist. Today, we show them exactly who we are." Above them, Earth's orbital lanes hummed with activity as the greatest reorganization in human history continued. The storm was gathering, and humanity would face it united in diversity, strength born from chaos, order emerging from freedom rather than constraint. The aliens would arrive expecting a primitive civilization divided by borders and ideologies. They would find something else entirely. The message arrived as a cascade of light across every electronic device on Earth. Computer screens, holographic displays, even ancient LCD billboards flickered in perfect synchronization as the Vorkath made their presence known to humanity. Dr. Madison Taylor stood in the Global Defense Council's analysis chamber, watching as the alien transmission decoded itself across multiple quantum channels simultaneously. The message repeated in perfect, crystalline clarity. "We are the Vorkath, guardians of galactic order. Your species has been observed. Your advancement requires evaluation. Prepare for assessment." "Well," Admiral Okonjo said, breaking the momentary silence, "at least they're direct." His attempt at humor did little to dispel the tension in the room. Madison's neural interface was already processing the transmission's underlying structure. "This is fascinating," she muttered, her augmented vision highlighting patterns in the data stream. "The message itself is almost secondary to its delivery method. Look at how they're manipulating quantum states to ensure perfect reception." She expanded the analysis, sharing it through the secure network. Every transmission carries multiple layers of information. They're not just communicating. They're demonstrating their technological superiority. But she paused, focusing on a particular pattern. "There's something else here." A young lieutenant from the European Quantum Computing Division spoke up. "Dr. Taylor, I'm seeing a recurring sequence in the background noise. It's like they can't help but be mathematical, even in their warnings." "Exactly," Madison replied, excitement cutting through her exhaustion. "Their message is precise, structured, almost predictable." She manipulated the holographic display, highlighting subtle patterns in the transmission. "They're showing us their mastery of technology, but they're also revealing how their minds work." Admiral Okonjo leaned forward, his strategic mind engaging. "Can we use this?" Before Madison could answer, another voice cut through the chamber. "It's Base 12 mathematics." Everyone turned to face a young woman who had been quietly working in the corner. Sarah Martinez, a civilian consultant with an unusual background in both theoretical mathematics and musical composition. "The whole message is structured like a 12-tone musical scale," Sarah continued, her hands moving through the holographic data. "Every variation, every harmonic follows perfect mathematical progressions. It's beautiful, but it's also rigid," Madison finished. "They're so focused on demonstrating their advancement that they don't realize they're revealing their fundamental nature." She turned to the Admiral. "Remember what we discussed about their flight patterns? The same principle applies here. They're bound by their own perfection." The Admiral's eyes gleamed with understanding. "Can we respond in kind?" Madison shared a look with Sarah. "Better. We can respond in our own way." Her fingers flew through the holographic interface, composing a reply. "We'll acknowledge their message, but we'll do it across multiple channels, each slightly different. Jazz variations on their mathematical theme. Let's show them that humanity understands harmony but embraces improvisation." The response took shape, a complex tapestry of signals that respected the Vorkath's mathematical base, but wove in elements of human creativity. Classical music structures intertwined with quantum data, creating a message that was both acknowledgement and subtle declaration of independence. "We're ready to transmit," Madison announced, but Admiral Okonjo held up his hand. "One moment," he said, turning to address the assembled leaders. "We're about to announce ourselves to an advanced alien civilization. Anyone want to add something to the message?" Sarah stepped forward again. "I have an idea." She quickly explained her concept, and smiles spread across the room. It was perfect. A small addition that would either confuse or intrigue their visitors, but would definitely show them that humanity thought differently. The combined message launched toward the approaching fleet, a quantum-encrypted acknowledgement carrying the mathematical precision the Vorkath would expect, wrapped in layers of human creativity they couldn't predict, and ending with a simple Earth cultural reference that no alien logic could fully process. A joke. As they waited for a response, Madison studied the continuing stream of data from the alien fleet. "Their formation is shifting," she noted. "They're reorganizing. I think we surprised them." Admiral Okonjo smiled. "Good. In my experience, surprised opponents make mistakes. And right now, we need every advantage we can get." The chamber hummed with activity as humanity awaited the Vorkath's response. They had announced themselves not as primitive suspects awaiting judgment, but as equals who saw the universe through their own unique lens. Now they would discover if the guardians of galactic order could handle a species that refused to follow their script. The Vorkath struck without warning. One moment, Earth's orbital networks functioned normally. The next, quantum-tipped lances of energy sliced through space toward humanity's most vital satellites. Multiple contacts. The European Space Command operator's voice crackled through quantum channels. "They're targeting our communication arrays." Admiral Okonjo watched the tactical display with practiced calm as red markers bloomed across Earth's orbital space. "Execute Protocol Mockingbird," he commanded. "Let's show them our first surprise." What the Vorkath expected to be simple target practice became something else entirely. Earth's satellites, instead of remaining stationary, began to move. Thousands of orbital platforms, from military installations to weather monitoring stations, activated hidden maneuvering systems. Dr. Madison Taylor's voice came through the command channel. "Their targeting algorithms are adapting, but they're following predictable patterns. Just like their communications, they can't help themselves." The first wave of alien energy weapons found only empty space where their targets should have been. Earth's orbital grid had transformed into a swirling dance of moving platforms, each following randomized paths developed by gaming industry veterans. "Pattern recognition analysis coming in," Sarah Martinez announced, her hands flying over her holographic interface. "They're trying to calculate our satellite movements using standard orbital mechanics. They don't understand. They can't understand that each satellite is running a modified version of classic video game A." A Vorkath beam struck a seemingly critical communications hub, only to discover it was a holographic decoy. The real platform had already split into 3 smaller units, each broadcasting on different frequencies. "Their weapons are incredibly advanced," Madison noted, studying the quantum readings. "But their tactical doctrine is obsolete. They're fighting the war they expected, not the one they're in." The battle space became a chaos of motion and counter-motion. Amateur radio operators around the globe, linked into the defense network, provided real-time updates on alien ship movements. Their Earth-bound perspectives offered angles of observation the Vorkath hadn't considered. High school satellite project Dancing Star just took out their targeting array in Sector 7, reported a technician, disbelief coloring his voice. The tiny cube satellite, built by teenagers in Mumbai, had transmitted its entire memory of Bollywood dance videos directly into the alien sensor systems, creating a cascade of pattern recognition errors. Admiral Okonjo allowed himself a small smile. Humanity's greatest strength, We never learned there was a right way to fight in space. The Vorkath fleet commander's frustration became evident in their next transmission. Your defensive patterns violate established protocols. Conform to standard orbital engagement procedures. Sarah couldn't suppress a laugh as she translated. They're actually angry that we're not fighting properly. Send them the video game high scores as a response, Madison suggested, her eyes twinkling. In their base 12 mathematics. Of course. The battle continued to evolve. Every time the Vorkath adapted to one human tactic, 3 more appeared. Civilian communications satellites transformed into electronic warfare platforms. Weather monitoring stations began broadcasting solar wind data in ways that interfered with alien sensors. They're pulling back, announced the Orbital Defense Coordinator. Regrouping at lunar distance, we've survived their first test. But Madison frowned at her quantum readings. This was just a probe. They were testing our defensive capabilities and, more importantly, trying to understand our thinking. She highlighted a pattern in the enemy fleet's movements. Look, they're already analyzing everything we showed them. Next time, they'll be better prepared. Admiral Okonjo nodded. Then we'll need to be even more unpredictable. Dr. Taylor, how long would it take to implement your quantum resonance idea? The one based on jazz improvisation. With Sarah's help, maybe 12 hours. But we don't know if it will work. That's exactly why it might, the Admiral replied. Humanity's greatest weapons have always been the ones we weren't sure would work until we tried them. As the Vorkath fleet regrouped, Earth's defenders began preparing their next set of surprises. They had survived the first engagement not through superior technology, but through creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to break every rule of conventional space warfare. The real battle was yet to come, but humanity had sent its message. Underestimate us at your peril. Their quantum shields operate on harmonics, Dr. Madison Taylor explained, her holographic presentation filling the command center. Complex, yes, but ultimately predictable. Like everything else about the Vorkath, they follow strict mathematical patterns. Sarah Martinez nodded enthusiastically, her hands dancing through streams of data. It's like they've built their entire defensive system around perfect musical scales, but they've never heard jazz. Admiral Okonjo raised an eyebrow. And you believe we can use this? We already are, Madison replied, bringing up a new display. Remember that high school satellite that disrupted their sensors with Bollywood music? It wasn't just the data overflow that caused problems. The rhythmic patterns actually created interference in their quantum field harmonics. The command center hummed with activity as tactical officers and civilian specialists worked together, each bringing unique perspectives to humanity's defense. A retired game developer from Seattle had reprogrammed defensive drones to move using old racing game algorithms. A classical musician from Vienna had discovered that Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, when transmitted on quantum frequencies, could disrupt Vorkath targeting systems. Their next attack will be stronger, the Admiral warned. They've had time to analyze our tactics. Good, Madison smiled. Because we're not using the same ones twice. She gestured to a group of civilian contractors hunched over their neural interfaces. Meet our new electronic warfare team. The Admiral blinked in surprise. Are those professional streamers? The best in the business at adapting to unexpected situations in real time, Sarah explained. They're helping us develop randomized response patterns based on competitive gaming strategies. Suddenly, the alert klaxons sounded. The Vorkath fleet was moving again, but differently this time. Their formation was more fluid, less rigid. They were learning. Multiple quantum signatures detected, called out the sensor officer. They're using a new kind of energy weapon. Madison's fingers flew across her interface. They've modified their attack patterns based on our previous defense, but they're still thinking like the Vorkath. She highlighted a section of tactical data. Look, even their adaptations follow predictable progressions. The alien fleet struck with devastating precision, their weapons far more effective than before. But Earth's defenders were ready with their own evolution of tactics. Weather control satellites began generating localized electromagnetic storms using patterns derived from chaos theory. Orbital manufacturing platforms transformed into decentralized defense networks, each unit operating on randomized protocols developed by social media algorithm designers. "They're targeting our command and control nodes," reported the tactical officer. But the admiral just smiled. "What command and control nodes?" he asked. Following Madison's suggestion, they'd disbanded traditional military hierarchy 2 hours earlier. Each defensive unit now operated semi-autonomously, coordinating through encrypted channels using protocols based on virtual currency blockchain technology. The Vorkat's precise, coordinated attacks found themselves striking at shadows, while real threats emerged from unexpected vectors. A swarm of maintenance drones, reprogrammed by a teenage hackathon winner from Lagos, slipped through their defenses using movement patterns based on honeybee dances. "Their quantum shields are adapting," Madison noted, studying the readings. "But each adaptation makes them more predictable. They can't help trying to impose order on chaos." Sarah's console lit up with new data. "The jazz disruption is working. Their shield harmonics are destabilizing whenever we hit them with improvised frequency patterns." The battle space became a symphony of ordered chaos. Earth's defenders threw everything they had at the aliens: quantum signals modulated by jazz solos, attack patterns based on population migration models, defensive formations derived from fluid dynamics in coffee cups. "We're not just surviving," Madison realized, watching the tactical display. "We're teaching them something they've never had to learn: how to deal with a species that doesn't play by their rules." The Vorkath fleet's reactions became increasingly erratic as their tactical computers struggled to predict human responses. Their attempts to impose order on the battlefield only made them more vulnerable to humanity's controlled chaos. Admiral Okonjo watched as another alien formation broke apart under a barrage of seemingly random attacks. "Send them a message," he ordered. "Tell them in their perfect mathematical language. This is just the beginning." As the battle raged on, humanity's greatest weakness, its unpredictability, had become its greatest strength. The guardians of galactic order were learning a harsh lesson. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is the ability to break all the rules. "Launch Operation Wildcard," Admiral Okonjo commanded, his voice carrying across the global defense chamber. The holographic display transformed, showing thousands of human vessels breaking formation, each adopting its own unique attack pattern. Dr. Madison Taylor watched as her quantum readings exploded with activity. The Vorkath fleet is responding exactly as predicted. They're trying to establish a containment grid based on standard military doctrine. "Standard for them," Sarah Martinez added, her fingers dancing across neural interface controls. "They still haven't figured out that we don't play by anyone's rules but our own." The space between Earth and lunar orbit became a kaleidoscope of controlled chaos. Mining vessels retrofitted with electromagnetic pulse generators dove through gaps in the alien formation. Civilian spacecraft, their hulls now coated with quantum reactive paint developed by street artists, became invisible to Vorkath sensors. "Multiple enemy formations breaking up," reported the tactical officer. "They're attempting to adapt, but their command structure can't handle this many independent variables." Madison highlighted a particular section of the battlefield. "Look at their response patterns. Every time they encounter something unexpected, they pause for exactly 2.4 seconds while their tactical computers recalculate. That's our window." The Admiral nodded. "Execute Phase 2. Let's show them what humanity does with a 2.4-second advantage." Across the solar system, Earth's defenders seized their moment. A swarm of repurposed weather satellites, their protocols rewritten by video game speedrunners, exploited each momentary pause in the Vorkath defense. Solar power collection platforms transformed into massive electromagnetic disruptors, their energy signatures masked by patterns based on natural phenomena. "New contact," Sarah called out. "They're deploying some kind of quantum field generator. It's trying to impose order on local spacetime. Madison's eyes lit up as she studied the readings. They still don't understand. They're attempting to force the battlefield to conform to their physics models. But we're not playing by their physics, Admiral Okonjo finished. Deploy the quantum jazz projectors. The experimental devices, developed by combining Dr. Taylor's theories with Earth's music history, activated simultaneously. Each one broadcast a unique frequency pattern based on classic jazz improvisations, creating a web of unpredictable quantum interference. Their field generator is failing, Madison reported, unable to hide her excitement. They can't maintain quantum stability while processing this many random variables. The Vorkath response came swiftly but predictably, a massive surge of their most powerful weapons, aimed at what their tactical computers identified as critical human command nodes. But humanity's forces had no critical nodes, no central command structure to target. They're still fighting the war they understand, the Admiral observed. Show them the war they don't. Earth's defenders unleashed their full arsenal of unconventional weapons. Orbital manufacturing platforms sprayed clouds of smart particles programmed with combat routines derived from ant colony behavior. Communication satellites transmitted signals modulated by patterns found in ocean waves and wind currents. Enemy fleet showing signs of systemic failure, Sarah announced. Their command and control structure is breaking down under the strain of processing our tactical variations. Madison's quantum sensors revealed the extent of the Vorkath's predicament. Their entire battle network is based on predictable cause and effect. Every random element we introduce cascades through their system, forcing more computational pauses. They're drowning in chaos. The massive alien vessels, each one a triumph of ordered engineering, began to move erratically. Their perfect formation dissolved as individual ships struggled to process the overwhelming complexity of human combat tactics. We're not just fighting them, Madison realized. We're teaching them something their entire civilization has forgotten, the power of embracing uncertainty. Admiral Okonjo watched as the Vorkath fleet retreated to a higher orbit, their once perfect formation now ragged and disorganized. Send them a message, he ordered. In their mathematics, tell them, this is humanity. We thrive in chaos. We dance with uncertainty, and we're just getting started. As the message transmitted, Earth's defenders regrouped, preparing for the next phase of battle. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or numbers, but its fundamental nature, the ability to adapt, to improvise, and to find victory in the spaces between order and chaos. The Vorkath had come to impose their version of order on humanity. Instead, humanity was teaching them a new way to see the universe, one beautiful, unpredictable moment at a time. Dr. Madison Taylor stared at her quantum readings, a revelation slowly dawning. These energy signatures, they're not uniform. The Vorkath fleet, it's not a single species. Sarah Martinez leaned in, her neural interface processing the data streams. Look at these communication patterns, multiple distinct types of quantum resonance, each with its own harmonic signature. Admiral Okonjo immediately grasped the implications. They're not just a fleet. They're a coalition, or perhaps an empire, Madison finished. And not everyone in it is happy with the current leadership. The holographic display showed the Vorkath fleet regrouping after Operation Wildcard success. But now, with their new understanding, the defenders could see subtle differences in ship designs, energy patterns, and communication methods. Each vessel class has its own quantum signature, Madison explained, highlighting different sections of the fleet. But look here, the command ships are forcing all communications through standardized protocols. They're imposing order even on thought itself. Sarah's hands flew across her interface. The lower-ranked ships, they're not just following orders. They're being controlled through some kind of quantum hierarchy. It's like digital chains. Admiral Okonjo's expression hardened. Earth has a long history of dealing with empires and forced hierarchies. Dr. Taylor, can we use this? Madison was already adapting her quantum analysis programs. Better than that. We can give them something they've never had before, a choice. The next hours were a flurry of activity as Earth's most brilliant minds worked on a new kind of weapon. Freedom of thought. Linguists and historians collaborated with quantum physicists and cultural anthropologists, crafting messages that would resonate across species barriers. We need to show them alternatives, Madison explained to the assembled team. Not just tactically, but philosophically. Earth's history is full of successful rebellions and revolutions. We know how to speak to the oppressed. Sarah's contribution proved invaluable. Music theory shows us that harmony doesn't require rigid control. We can demonstrate this through quantum frequencies. Show them that complex systems can self-organize without central authority. The first transmission was a masterpiece of subtle rebellion. Earth's defenders broadcast quantum signals encoded with Earth's history of successful revolutions, but translated into the mathematical language the Vorkath understood. Each message carried hidden harmonics that bypassed the Empire's control protocols. Look at these response patterns, Madison pointed to her display. The smaller ships, especially in the outer formations, they're receiving our messages despite the command ship's attempts to block them. The effect rippled through the alien fleet like waves through a pond. Ships began moving with slightly less precision, their formation showing minute imperfections that would have been unthinkable hours before. They're thinking for themselves, Sarah whispered, maybe for the first time in generations. Admiral Okonjo watched as the Vorkath fleet's perfect order began showing more pronounced signs of strain. Keep broadcasting. Focus on ships showing the most deviation from standard patterns. The next wave of transmissions carried stories of Earth's own journey from rigid hierarchies to democratic systems. But these weren't just historical accounts. They were encoded in quantum frequencies that demonstrated the very freedom they described, showing how controlled chaos could be more effective than imposed order. Multiple ships breaking formation, reported the tactical officer. The command vessels are trying to restore order, but you can't force order on those who've tasted freedom, Madison finished. Their quantum control systems rely on willing acceptance. Once questioned, they begin to fail. The Vorkath fleet's response was immediate but fragmented. Command ships attempted to impose stricter controls, but their efforts only highlighted the very oppression Earth's messages had exposed. More vessels began showing signs of independence, their movements becoming less predictable, more human. We haven't just shown them a new way to fight, Admiral Okonjo realized. We've shown them a new way to exist. As they watched, the first Vorkath ship completely broke from its assigned position, its quantum signature resonating with frequencies that echoed Earth's transmissions about freedom and self-determination. Send them one more message, Madison suggested. Tell them, in chaos, find your freedom. In freedom, find your strength. The battle for Earth was becoming something else entirely, a revolution that would reshape not just humanity's future, but the very structure of galactic society. The Vorkath command ships hung motionless against the star-filled backdrop, their once perfect formation now fragmented like a broken crystal. Below them, Earth gleamed blue and defiant, its orbital spaces alive with the controlled chaos of humanity's defense grid. They're broadcasting, Sarah Martinez announced, her neural interface processing the incoming quantum signals. But this is different. Multiple frequencies, multiple sources. They're not speaking with one voice anymore. Dr. Madison Taylor studied the quantum readings, a smile playing at her lips. The revolution worked better than we expected. Their rigid hierarchy is completely destabilized. Admiral Okonjo watched the tactical display as more Vorkath ships broke from their traditional positions. Can you translate their transmissions? Better than that, Madison replied. I can show you. Her hands moved through the holographic interface, transforming the alien quantum signals into visual patterns. The command center filled with swirling representations of alien thoughts and emotions, fear, hope, confusion, and something new, freedom. The lower-ranked ships aren't just refusing orders, Sarah observed. They're creating their own communication protocols. Look at these patterns. They're combining their rigid mathematical precision with elements of randomness. They're learning to improvise. The main Vorkath command vessel initiated an emergency transmission. The message, when decoded, carried none of its former authority. Request immediate dialogue with Earth leadership. Previous evaluation protocols deemed inadequate. Admiral Okonjo exchanged glances with Madison. It seems we've taught them more than they intended to learn. The next hours transformed the standoff into something unprecedented in galactic history. The Vorkath fleet, once a symbol of rigid order, became a laboratory for new forms of organization. Ships clustered in fluid formations based on choice rather than command, their crews exploring the possibilities of voluntary cooperation. "They're asking us to teach them," Madison said, reviewing the latest transmissions. "Not just about warfare, but about everything. Music, art, democracy, free will." They'd spent millennia imposing order on the galaxy, never realizing how much they were limiting themselves. Sarah's console lit up with new data. The quantum harmonics are stabilizing, but differently than before. Instead of forced synchronization, they're achieving natural resonance. It's like they're learning to dance. The Admiral studied the tactical display, where human and alien ships now moved in complex, interweaving patterns. "Send word to all Earth forces. The war is over. Now we begin the real challenge. Teaching a galactic empire how to embrace chaos." Madison's quantum analysis revealed the extent of the transformation. The Vorkath ship's energy signatures had changed, becoming more dynamic, more alive. "They're not just accepting change," she noted. "They're eager for it. Centuries of rigid control are giving way to genuine curiosity." The first formal meeting took place in Earth orbit. Representatives from both sides gathered on a neutral platform, where humans demonstrated their philosophy not through lectures, but through action. They showed how jazz musicians could create harmony without a conductor, how democratic systems could function without central control, how innovation flourished in the spaces between order and chaos. "We misjudged your species," the Vorkath High Commander admitted, its quantum translator struggling to convey concepts of humility and wonder. "We sought to test your worthiness to join galactic society. Instead, you have shown us that our society itself needed to evolve." Admiral Okonjo's response was diplomatic but firm. "Evolution is constant. The moment we stop adapting is the moment we start dying." As the formal proceedings concluded, Madison observed something remarkable in her quantum readings. The Vorkath ships were generating new energy patterns, combining their traditional precision with random elements inspired by human creativity. They weren't just learning humanity's lessons, they were already building on them. "Look at that," Sarah whispered, pointing to where alien and human vessels maneuvered together in an impromptu space ballet. "They're playing. Actually playing with spaceflight patterns." Madison smiled as she watched the display. "We did more than win a war. We showed them a new way to see the universe." She turned to Admiral Okonjo. "What do you think happens next?" "What always happens when humanity encounters something new," he replied. "We learn from each other, we grow, and we explore the unknown together." He paused, watching the dance of ships above Earth. "But this time, we'll have partners who understand that the best order comes from embracing chaos." The stars gleamed overhead as humanity prepared to take its place in a changing galaxy. They had faced their first contact with an alien civilization, not with fear or submission, but with creativity, courage, and an unwavering belief in freedom. In doing so, they hadn't just defended Earth, they had transformed the very nature of galactic civilization. A new dawn was rising, not just for humanity, but for all species who dared to question the old order and embrace the beautiful uncertainty of free will.